Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to take a look at a truly unique deck that I had not seen. And I am really paying attention and looking at an awful lot of decks. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Zapdos is back. How cool is that? Shout out to the lovely Neil Pie over on Twitter, hosting Neil Pie Open every Sunday. An awesome online tournament run by awesome people. They've got a surfing Porygon as their logo. That alone is enough to get me in. And we saw a 10th place finish with Zapdos, Jirachi. It's so cool! I'm still not convinced it's great. But I do think it has some good matchups. So let's take a look. Now, starting off then, what we've got is Zapdos. And this is very much a Zapdos kind of deck. Now, this is the Zapdos from back in Team Up. And that's the one that for a single energy does 80 damage if you came active this turn, but only does 10 damage if you didn't. So try and come active, and that's it. It's 110 HP single prize Pokemon that does 80 damage for a single energy if you came active this turn. There's no more nuance to it than that. That is what the Pokemon does. Okay. It's good. I mean, look, if you're against stuff like Jirachi, and there are many of them out there, you are going to have an absolute field day cleaning up. Against other decks, your damage output is going to be kind of low. Do remember that we play, obviously, I know we're going slightly out of order, but we have to, 4 Electro Power, so each one of those played is an extra 30 damage, so you can essentially keep building up your damage a little bit here. But there's only so far you can go. But therein, ladies and gentlemen, lies the tricks. Because you see, this is one of those newfangled decks that plays Jirachi Prism Star. Incidentally, a combo that is getting more and more popular, and not for nothing, don't forget we've got a Wobbuffet that turns off Prism Star attacks and abilities. Just putting that out there. You're welcome. But the theory with Jirachi Prism Star is if you draw it as a face down prize card, you put it straight onto your bench, assuming you've got a bench space, of course, and then you draw an extra prize. How do you make sure it's in your prize cards and you know where it is? Well, you use Oranguru to swap any card in your hand with the top card of your deck. So that puts Jirachi on top of your deck. And then you use the Mr. Mime from Detective Pikachu to swap the top card of your deck, which at this stage you know for a fact is Jirachi Prism Star, with one of your face down prize cards. Bearing in mind, you might be putting it as a face down prize card, but you put it there, you know exactly which face-down prize card it is. Now, you use Scoop Up Net here, and essentially the best case scenario is 3 uses. You get 1 use organically when you get Jirachi Prism Star, swap it with Mr. Mime, etc. You then have to Scoop Up Net both Jirachi and Mr. Mime to redo the combo, as they are coming into play abilities. Well, the Mr. Mime is, but the Jirachi needs to be picked up to be put on top of your deck. So the best case scenario here is once organically and then using 4 Scoop Up Net to do it twice more, and you'll get the combo firing 3 times in a game. It's not that likely you'll get it rolling 3 times in a game, but it remains possible. Now there is one other attacker here, and it's Tapu Koko V. And we love Tapu Koko V in a deck like this. Firstly, it's got free retreat. Bearing in mind Zapdos has to come active to do the extra damage. That's a good thing. Secondly, it's got an attack for a single energy that does 20 damage and draws 2 cards. Great if you go second and you really have nothing rolling. And thirdly, it can do 200 for free energy. You're not doing enough damage all the time with Zapdos. You need something that can do extra damage. That's where Tapu Koko V comes in. And then there is a little bit of a tech Tapu Fini here. Tapu Fini for a single colourless energy gets a 1-hit KO on Blacephalon. Sure, it probably does other stuff, but that's the reason why we play it. You're getting a 1-hit KO, and you're getting it on Blacephalon. And then there's a few little techs. We are playing Dedenne GX. You bench it, discard your hand, draw 6 cards. It's great for speed. We are playing, obviously, the Jirachi that sits in the active, uses its ability. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, find a trainer, put it in your hand, you go to sleep. But oh look, a skateboard gives you free retreat even if you're asleep, and we're good to go. And then we've got 1 copy of Mew that protects your bench from damage, and 1 copy of Fiona, which both makes your opponents switch their active. Great if the only Pokemon you don't want to deal with is active. And also basically prevents you from ever decking out, because it goes on the bottom of your deck. So you've got 0 cards in deck, use Fiona, yay, now I'm not decking out. Life is good. A very tricksy Pokemon line. Now in terms of energy, we're playing a bunch of basic lightning, obviously, and we're playing 4 speed energy, obviously. You attach speed energy and you draw 2 cards. It basically has to be a 4 of in every lightning deck, unless you've got a really, really compelling reason not to play it. And actually, while we're here, there was a Pokemon I didn't tell you about. How rude of me, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tapu Koko. Not the V, just Tapu Koko Prism Star. You lost zone it from the bench and you attach 2 energy, 1 to each of 2 bench Pokemon. Works with your basic energy, and of course, it's another must-play in lightning decks. Especially good. You essentially use it to get Tapu Koko rolling in 1 turn, bearing in mind that Zapdos, you're only ever really attaching 1 energy, so you can do it manually quite easily. Nice. Now, in terms of trainer cards here, we've got the usual lightning tricks. 4 copies of Electro Power, and then 1 copy of Thunder Mountain. It reduces your attack cost by 1, so by combining Thunder Mountain and Tapu Koko Prism Stars, you can use Tapu Koko V to attack, essentially from nothing to 200 damage in a single turn. That's a good thing. In terms of supporters, we got 4 copies of Professor's Research. Discard your hand, draw 7. Fastest, most aggressive draw card we've got. And 3 copies of Marnie. Both players shuffle their hands, put them on the bottom of their decks. You draw 5 cards, your opponent draws 4. It's decent draw power for you, while also disrupting your opponent. It's why it's so good. And then 3 copies of Boss's Orders. You get to drag one of your opponent's Pokemon from the bench into the active. When you're playing decks like this that generally have a lower damage output, one of the things you really need to make sure you're doing reliably is taking out bench Pokemon. Taking out the Pokemon you can. Your opponent is going to keep putting up Pokemon that you can't deal with because of your comparatively low damage output, and the way you fight that is with Boss's Orders and, of course, the aforementioned Fiona. You've got options here. We got 1 copy of a skateboard just to give free retreat to Jirachi, and 4 copies of Switch to get Jirachi in and out the active. We do play 4 copies of Scoop Up Net, which can get Jirachi in and out the active, but please do bear in mind Scoop Up Net is the only way to rejig that Jirachi combo. So if you use 1 Scoop Up Net on a Jirachi not Prism Star, then instead of having 2 extra goes with a combo, you're down to 1. Also, remember Jirachi Prism Star is, as with all Prism Stars, limited to 1 in your deck. So if it ends up priced, I mean, on the one hand, it's weird, right? Because Jirachi, you used to 1-tip price, so you could draw it randomly and go, yay! But now that we're manipulating it, not so much. I mean, if it's prized and you draw it organically, that's awesome. It's just not always, it's not going to work that much, unfortunately. It's going to be prized like 1 in 10 games, and then there's going to be those games where you draw it as your final prize, or the games where you lose, etc. So, hey-ho. Can't win them all. Now, as well as Electro Power for extra damage, we've got 2 copies of Vitality Band, and this does little things like take you from 80 to 90 damage, so things like Chinchino, for instance, or things like Malamar, still good Pokemon, still seeing play, will then go down in 1 hit rather than more. Or Vitality Band and a single Electro Power, you're now hitting 120, which gets stuff like Blacephalon, for argument's sake. That's a pretty nice thing. In terms of Pokemon Search, we're playing 4 copies of Quick Ball because we've got an entirely basic deck. But then we need some other Pokemon Search, so we play 2 copies of Great Ball. It's not as reliable as Quick Ball that just lets you search out any Pokemon you want because you're only playing basic Pokemon. But it's still, look at the top 7 cards, find a Pokemon, it's fine. And it doesn't make you discard a card from your hand like Quick Ball does, you know. Could be worse. I mentioned Thunder Mountain, we're also playing 1 Shrine of Punishment. Drops a damage counter on each EX and GX between turns. Yes, that does include your Dedenne. But Dedenne, you're only going to play it in like an emergency. So, you should be alright. But again, you're trying to compensate for your comparatively low damage output here. And then we got 1 copy of Tool Scrapper. Takes away stuff like Big Charm that your opponent will be using to avoid a KO, or Spell Tag for your opponents to drop extra damage, or Metal Frying Pan to reduce damage done to you, etc, etc, etc. So, yeah. I think this works very nicely indeed. It's not a deck I was expecting to see doing well in all of these online tournaments we've got going on at the moment. But the fact of the matter is, you've got an efficient single energy attacker, and then you've got all of your tricks for taking extra prizes, with Tapu Koko to provide a little bit more beef if you need to, and maybe, just maybe, this is what's been missing from the format all along. I love it, and I wanted to show it to you. And shout out to Neil Pye for running the Open. It is awesome. But for now, I want to know what you think about this deck. Do you think it's legit? Do you think it is a great deck? Or do you think it's one of those that had a nice tournament, but we shouldn't be taking too seriously? Let me know in the comment section. Go nuts. Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.